Today we're going to talk about an amazing woman who pioneered the film industry and especially her line and stunt work. Her name is Helen Holmes. Helen was well known for her work in front and behind the camera. Helen Holmes was born June 19th, 1891 in Chicago. She grew up in South Bend, Indiana as the third child of Louis R. Holmes and Sophia Barnes. A lot of accounts about aspects of her life are different. In her early adult years, some say she broke down due to overwork and her brother invited her to his ranch in Death Valley, California. Others say that she attended a convent school in Chicago and modeled for Santa Fe F Railroad posters, and that in 1910, her brother's illness required her to move to Death Valley. But all accounts say that when her brother died, she moved to LA, where she began her legacy. In 1912, Helen met Mabel Normand and was discovered by Max Sennett. Through him, she signed to Keystone. In 1913 alone, she appeared in 18 movies, and this would be the year she meets her first husband, Jack McGowan. Helen then signed with Kaitlyn Studios, where Jack worked since 1908. Kaitlyn Studios produced the serial The Hazards of Helen, which first appeared in November 1914. Helen acted in all but 2 of the first 48 episodes, wrote at least 1, and directed several. This is where Helen got her nickname, the Railroad Girl. She and Jack were also able to give these episodes realism and accuracy due to their own personal experiences being involved with the railroad since they were growing up. Because of this, Helen became very popular, appearing in almost every issue of the movie magazines and sometimes was even on the cover. When it came to her stunts, Helen did almost all of them, and the danger she faced while filming these stunts was very real. During an episode of The Lost Express, she was trapped inside of a burning train car, and in another, the brakes gave out and the train crashed. She almost lost an eye and was punctured by a cactus thorn. In 1915, it was reported that Helen adopted a baby. Here's where the stories differ. One story says that Helen told Movie Magazine that she borrowed the baby from an orphanage and fell in love with the baby and decided to keep it. But another story is told from her granddaughter, who said the baby was the daughter of Jack and his housekeeper, and Helen decided to raise it on her own to avoid all scandals. Either way, Dorothea Holmes McGowan was born on December 17th, 1915. Helen and Jack left Callum for unknown reasons and went to work for Universal Pictures. There, they had Helen assigned to scenario writing and never began the serial that they promised her. A few months later, Helen and Jack would leave Universal Studios and sign to Signal Film Corporation, who offered them financing and distribution. There, they would create The Girl in the Game, which aired in 1915 and grossed over $2 million. Just to prove how popular Helen was at this time, the California State Fair in September of 1917 held the Helen Holmes Day, where they staged a train wreck in her honor. For this stunt, 2 train cars were aimed at each other, and Helen had to jump from one train car into an automobile next to it, right before the 2 train cars crashed completely. Unfortunately, Signal Film Corporation dissolved. At the same time, Helen and Jack had broken up. These 2 things severely impacted her, leading her to not make any films in 1918 and only one in 1919. Finally, in 1920, Helen began working for Harry Albert Warner to make serials under the Helen Holmes Production Corporation. They released The Danger Trail in 1920. Helen also lent them $5,000 to complete The Tiger Band and sued them after not being repaid at all. The failure of this film led to Helen stopping producing altogether, and so she returned to acting. While she was returning to acting, Helen raised 2 Irish Terriers and trained them for the movies. She even appeared in the film 40 Horses Hawkins with one of the dogs. The 1930s newspapers talked about Helen's attempted comeback to acting after 10 years retirement. And sadly, it didn't really work out in her favor. But in 1938, she was elected the president of the Writing and Stunts Girls of the Screen, which initiated collective bargaining for stunt women all over the world. In the late 1940s, she operated a small antique business out of her home, and in 1915, Helen died from pulmonary tuberculosis. Helen's impact as being the first stuntwoman will never be forgotten. During such a trying time for women and fighting for their rights, Helen paved a way and made sure women knew just how capable they really were. And frankly, she was just a badass. So that's all we have on Helen for today. Please tune in next time for What's Her Name to hear more about women you didn't find in your textbooks. Thank you for listening.